On a night when machines hummed louder than hope, a thin moonbeam slipped through a window no one had opened. It moved across the cold hospital floor as if searching for someone. And in a dim room where a woman lay awake, it found her. Nothing about that night would remain the same. The hospital at night has its own kind of stillness, one that doesn't silence everything, but instead amplifies small sounds until they feel huge. The distant beep of a monitor, the soft squeak of wheels from a cart down the hall, the quiet, uneven breaths of patients drifting in and out of sleep. Everything carries a weight that the daylight hours rarely reveal. In room 412, a woman named Mara lay awake, staring at the ceiling tiles she had memorized over the past week. Each tiny crack had become familiar, each faint shadow on the wall a quiet companion during her long, restless nights. She wasn't afraid. Not exactly. Her doctors had said the tests were still unclear, and they needed more time before they could be certain of anything. But uncertainty has its own way of settling into a heart. It doesn't storm or roar, it whispers. It makes every hour feel longer, every silence feel heavier. Mara had listened to these whispers for days now, and tonight they felt louder than ever. A narrow strip of light pressed through the blinds on the window, but it wasn't the harsh fluorescent glow of the hallway or the blue-white glare of medical equipment. This light was soft, almost impossibly soft, like the glow of a candle seen through frosted glass. Mara noticed it first when it touched the edge of her blanket, the fabric lighting up with a faint shimmer. She lifted her head slightly, unsure if her tired eyes were inventing the glow out of boredom or longing. But when the light shifted, sliding further into the room as if it had intention, she felt a small ripple of confusion mixed with curiosity. She reached to adjust the blinds, wondering if the moon outside had risen at the perfect angle to cut through the narrow space. But when she looked, the blinds were tightly shut. That didn't make sense. And yet the beam of light moved again, this time tracing a soft arc across the floor. It wasn't sharp like a reflection. It had a texture to it, a softness that felt warm even from a distance. Mara let her hand rest against the side rail of her hospital bed, not out of fear, but to anchor herself to the reality she knew, just long enough to understand the one she was seeing. The moonbeam, if that's truly what it was, drifted upward with a delicacy that felt almost alive. It hovered just above the foot of her bed, its edges trembling with the subtle glow of something half-real. For a moment, Mara wondered if she was dreaming. But she was wide awake, her mind too alert, her thoughts too heavy to confuse with sleep. The moonbeam brightened slightly, then stilled, as if it were waiting. Mara exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her voice came out faint but steady. "What are you?" she whispered, though she didn't expect an answer. The moonbeam pulsed in response, not with words, but with a sensation. A quiet reassurance that washed over her as gently as warm water on cold skin. The heaviness in her chest loosened just a little. The air in the room seemed softer. Even the hum of the machines felt less intrusive, as though they had stepped back to give this quiet moment room to unfold. She leaned forward slightly, ignoring the tug of the foreline in her arm. Her fingers hovered inches away from the light, but when she reached out fully, her hand passed through it. The sensation was faint, like the whisper of cool air mixed with warmth that didn't belong to the room. A memory surfaced, something her grandmother had once told her when she was a child afraid of the dark. "The moon has a gentle eye," she had said. "It watches the lonely ones most carefully." Mara hadn't thought of that in years, but the memory wrapped itself around her now, comforting and calm. "Why here?" she asked softly. "Why me?" There was no voice, but something shifted in the glow, a slow ripple that felt like a response. Not a promise of healing, not a denial of fear, just presence. A steady, unwavering presence. And that alone made her breathe differently. The moonbeam drifted closer to her pillow, illuminating the tired lines of her face, the faint smudge beneath her eyes. She could feel a warmth rise in her chest, not physical, but emotional. The quiet recognition of being seen in a moment she felt most invisible. Outside, a nurse's footsteps echoed down the hallway. The moonbeam dimmed slightly, as if conscious of being observed, though the door remained closed. When the footsteps faded again, the light returned to its gentle glow. Time moved differently now. Minutes stretched into something softer, something that didn't ache to be filled. Mara let herself sink back against the pillows, her body relaxing in ways it hadn't since she arrived. The moonbeam flickered once, then settled near her hand. She didn't ask it for anything. Not hope, not answers, not tomorrow. She simply let it stay, and it did. The machines around her continued their steady rhythm, beeping in calm, predictable patterns. The shadows on the wall eased into softer shapes. The air warmed with quiet companionship. Mara felt her eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from peace. Real, gentle peace. She whispered one last question, though she wasn't sure whom she was asking. "Will you come back?" The moonbeam glowed brighter for a single heartbeat, then slowly began to retreat, sliding back across the floor, up the wall, and toward the closed blinds. It didn't disappear abruptly. Instead, it lingered, just long enough to make its meaning clear. She didn't need to see it to know the answer. When it finally slipped away, the room dimmed slightly, but it no longer felt empty. Mara rested her head back on the pillow, her breathing steady, her fear quiet enough to let her drift toward sleep. Outside, behind the blinds, the moon shone softly over the hospital rooftop, watching, waiting, keeping its gentle eye on the quiet world below. And somewhere inside that vast, calm glow was the same moonbeam, waiting for the next window where someone needed a moment of light. Mara slept, for the first time in days, without waking in the middle of the night. She didn't know what the morning would bring, or what the doctors would say. But tonight, she didn't feel alone. And sometimes, That is enough.